Shortly before being fired on Twitter, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, the former US diplomat, had concluded his first tour of Latin America. This wasn't the first official trip a senior officer from the Trump administration had taken to the region, though. A few months ago in the summer of 2017, the Vice President himself, Mike Pence, had his own Latin American tour in which he visited Panama, Colombia, Argentina, and Chile. I think we all know that the relationship between the United States and Latin America is very, very, should we say, special. And by special, we mean not very good. And I'm not just saying this because there are about 60 million Hispanics living in the United States, but also because of historical precedents, commercial ties, and many, many security issues. Without going any further, 1 out of every 4 US trade dollars end up in this region. However, the Vice President and the former Secretary of State's tours left many with the feeling that, in the eyes of the Trump administration, Latin America is more of a nuisance than an opportunity. And this might actually be softening the blow, considering everything that Trump has said since he announced that he would run for president.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best.
No more NAFTA. No more NAFTA.
El hombre del Pelequin.
We're going to build the wall. We have no choice. We have no choice.
If we were to describe the relationship between the United States and Latin America today, we could say that the United States is kind of like that friend who demands loads of things from you, but when the situation's reversed, they won't do anything for you. A pretty good example of this is the pretty surreal Mike Pence tour, a tour that had practically no objectives and in which the Vice President seemed to be more concerned with trying to prevent the insignificant commercial relations between Chile and North Korea. Or maybe trying to get the Argentines to buy pork from his state, Indiana. He didn't seem to have much of a focus on actual international relations between the United States and Latin America.
I come from an agricultural state in the United States. I was governor of the state of Indiana before I became vice president. I know the quality of American pork.
And you know what? China, Xi Jinping's China, well, they're on the lookout. So, in the video today, we're gonna see what he wants. What does Donald Trump expect from Latin America? And also, well, what's happening with China? But first, let's look back at the history.
America for North Americans.
In 1823, the then President of the United States, James Monroe, launched what would later be known as the Monroe Doctrine. America for the Americans. Although, with time, this has become more like America for the North Americans. See, this doctrine, this policy, defended the claim that the European states had no right to intervene in American affairs or in the countries that were becoming independent at the time from Spain. At that time, the US was protecting Latin America and defending non-intervention, which sounds pretty good, right? Well, just wait a moment here, because there is certainly a problem. Well, this doctrine led Washington to do practically everything in Latin America, a region that has since become known as the US's backyard. Oh yes, since James Monroe launched this perspective, the United States has set up governments, has overthrown governments, has financed guerrillas, has financed armies, has bought politicians, has negotiated with drug traffickers, has managed to legitimize coups d'etats, and has committed many more actions aimed, depending on the time period, either at fighting communism or defending other interests, such as some big oil sector multinationals. Now, yes, of course, some good things have also been done, especially in recent years when the more, let's say, opaque relations gave way to a strategy from Washington that focused more on resolving internal conflicts. This was the case, for example, with Bill Clinton's Colombia Plan or George Bush's trade promotion strategy, which led him to sign no less than 10 new free trade agreements with Latin American countries, and to even propose for all of America to become a large free trade area. But even so, relations between Latin America and the United States, they've always been very peculiar. You see, due to the Monroe Doctrine, Washington has always felt like a legal guardian who can decide what's right, what's wrong, what's advisable, and what's not advisable. However, the results haven't been very positive. It's been over a year now since Donald Trump entered the White House, so let's see what the President of the United States of Latin America wants, what he expects, and what we can expect.
What does Donald Trump want?
Now, it's not going to surprise anyone watching this video that Donald Trump is not exactly Latin America's best friend. He seemingly has very little concern for the region except Cuba, Venezuela, and above all, well, Mexico. In fact, Trump has so little interest in Latin America that 1 year into his presidency, at the time of making this video, he still hasn't appointed someone for the Assistant Secretary of State for Western Hispanic Affairs. This is the person specifically responsible for diplomacy with Latin America, and it's quite unusual that he hasn't yet appointed anyone to this position. Oh, but that is not to say that his lack of interest hasn't made the region something of a plaything for him, nor does it mean that he doesn't expect anything from them. Well, let me explain this. Trump's first year has been marked with insults to Mexico, mostly due to his obsession with building that wall. Oh, and he's also threatened Colombia, which is something we're going to get to in a moment.
It may be through reimbursement, but one way or the other, Mexico will pay for the wall.
Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall. Build that wall. I love Mexican people. I have such a great relationship to Mexico. I hire thousands. People, the rich Mexicans, they're great people. Friends of mine, they buy my apartments.
Well, how about some more examples now? So listen to this. In 2017, as we saw here on VisualPolitik, Trump moved away from Obama's openness towards Cuba without really proposing any sort of alternative. Also, backing the worst customs of Western diplomacy in Latin America, he legitimized and supported the very suspicious re-election of Juan Orlando Hernandez in Honduras. And most recently, in 2018, his government decided to suspend the so-called temporary protected status for Nicaraguan, Honduran, Haitian, and above all, Salvadoran immigrants. And listen, because with this decision, 200,000 immigrants from El Salvador, yes, 200,000 will have to leave the United States or simply become illegal immigrants.
We had hoped that if we worked hard, paid our taxes, and didn't get in trouble, we would be allowed to stay. Veronica Lagunas, 39, a Salvadoran who has 2 children born in the United States.
And these are just a few examples. The list is really rather long. Perhaps that is why Trump's popularity in the region is so low. And when we say so low, we really mean it is just totally on the floor. I mean, check it out. In 2017, Gallup asked Latin American citizens for their opinion on President Trump. Only 16% had a positive opinion. But folks, here's an important question. The question that we really need to ask ourselves is, does all this offense, does all this poking in the eye mean that Trump doesn't want anything from Latin America? And the answer to that is not at all. His government is demanding several things from the region's countries, especially the following 3. First, unconditional support for his foreign policy, including his policy on Venezuela. Second, for people to renounce or curb China's influence. And third, for them to take the blame for everything, either by paying for the wall or by assuming more responsibilities in the fight against drug trafficking. Now, okay, except for China and the wall, the other demands could really be taken as actually being pretty reasonable. But do you know what the real problem here is? That's that the Trump administration never put any alternatives on the table. They don't seem very willing to give anything in return, and they do everything under the "you're either with me or against me" approach. And the truth is that if we want Latin America to change, evolve, to prosper, it needs support and it needs opportunities, like, for example, more trade opportunities. That was another Republican president, George Bush's precise strategy, and the results were actually pretty good. But okay, now you might be thinking, well, come on, Simon, surely Trump has also proposed some positive things, right? Well, I really think to answer that question, we need to see how Trump is treating the US's best allies in the region.
Friends.
I think we can say, without fear of being wrong, that Colombia, Honduras, and Mexico have traditionally been the US's best allies in Latin America. And you know what? With Trump in the White House, it's not really helping very much. Check out the statements Trump made while Rex Tillerson was on tour, trying to strengthen ties with Latin America.
These countries are not our friends. We think they're our friends, and we send them massive aid. And I won't mention names right now. We send them massive aid, and they're pouring drugs into our country, and they're laughing at us. Donald Trump.
Yes, Trump, he doesn't give out any names, but there's little doubt he was referring to Mexico, Colombia, Honduras, and Peru. On Mexico, he mentioned the wall, he mentioned the NAFTA renegotiation. There have been constant attacks since Trump announced his candidacy. And you know how people feel about Trump in Mexico? Well, according to polls, it's 1.6 points out of 10. Let's also take a look now at Colombia, the country that by far has historically had the best relationship with the US. Yeah, it might surprise you, but Colombia was actually the only Latin American country that sent troops to the Korean War. It also supported the United States in the 2003 invasion of Iraq, and this country's policies have pretty much always aligned with Washington's interests. These have included policies towards Cuba, China, and Palestine. Well, not even that prevented Trump from threatening this country by considering it non-cooperative with the fulfillment of international requirements in the fight against drug trafficking. This is something that could have serious economic and political consequences.
It isn't only treating an ally who's trying to solve the problem in a rude way. It's also a grave mistake. He's sending a toxic message to the rest of the region. Even if you do what the US asks, if they disagree with part of your strategy, they will act against you. Adam Isaacson, coordinator of the Washington Office for Latin American Affairs.
Yes, it is true that coca production has rebounded in Colombia and that the country hasn't been able to beat the drug trafficking. But threatening the country that has suffered the most from the war on drugs, threatening the only country that has managed to improve the situation, and I mean, on top of that, he's doing it without proposing any alternative.
We've lost our best leaders, our best journalists, our best judges, our best police in the war on drugs. Juan Manuel Santos, President of Colombia.
And regarding Honduras, another great ally, well, we've already told you here on VisualPolitik about Juan Orlando Hernandez's very probable coup. And even in Argentina, a country that is rapidly changing, something that Washington should logically act upon, well, they're not even acting then. Trump demands a lot from Latin America, but he really isn't willing to give much in return, not even to the United States' best friends in the region. And China knows it.
China's pursuit.
China and the Chinese influence in the region is becoming a great obsession for the United States. Rex Tillerson himself used the Monroe Doctrine to say that the United States has the right to block the interference of another power in America. But the question is, who gave the United States government that power in the first place?
Latin America does not need new imperial powers that seek only to benefit their own people. Rex Tillerson.
Allow me to explain this. Latin American countries have all the right in the world to seek other alliances, other markets, and other investments. And if those are Chinese... Perhaps what the US Department of State should ask itself is, how is it possible that Xi Jinping has visited the region more times in the last 5 years than the President of the United States, both Obama and Trump? Or that China is willing to promote trade agreements and investments while Trump is determined to punish Mexico, build walls, and restrict trade. A great example of this is the shutting down of the TPP, the largest trade agreement in history, which includes, among other countries, Mexico, Peru, and Chile. See, in the last Latin American and Caribbean states community meeting, China announced it would invest $250 billion in the region in the next decade. If the United States wants to maintain its power and its influence and continue to determine the political agenda, perhaps it should include looking after Latin America's interests in its political strategy. But now it's your turn. On a scale from 1 to 5, how would you assess the US's influence in Latin America? Well, you can leave your answer in the comments below as well as in this survey. And I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for brand new videos every Monday and every Thursday. Also, don't forget to check out our friends at the Reconsider Media podcast. They provided the vocals in this episode that were not mine. And as always, thank you for watching.
When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best.
No more NAFTA. No more NAFTA.
El hombre del Peliquin.
We're going to build the wall. We have no choice. We have no choice.